Hello and welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson. This is a place where Christian leaders and entrepreneurs are empowered to step into their greatness and fulfill their callings to the glory of God. If you're a professional, you're thinking, I want to start my own business. There's a business in me that's going to enlarge the kingdom of God and make a difference, and you're not sure how to get started? Go to www.errollawson.com now. You're going to love today's episode. Hey, why don't you go back and check out our over 100 previous episodes and see which one meets your need for where you are right now in your leadership journey. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy today's episode, and God bless you.
Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
Hello and welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson, and your special guest today is Grace Marshall. Grace is an author, coach, and productivity ninja who specializes in helping people find ways of doing their best work with less stress and overwhelm and more fun, focus, and fulfillment. She coaches at grace-marshall.com and runs workshops and speaks at conferences as a productivity ninja with Think Productive. She's also the best-selling author of 2 books. One is called 21 Ways to Manage the Stuff That Sucks Up Your Time and How to Be Really Productive, which was recently named as the best community's read in the CMI British Library Management Book of the Year Awards. She's from Stafford in the UK, lives with her husband and 12-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter, and is continually working on being a good enough mum and wife with intermittent lapses into hopelessness and brilliance. Grace, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Errol. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here.
It's great to be with you, man. And I know there's a lot more I could say about you. First of all, fill in any gaps in your bio right there for us and give us a glimpse into what you're up to in the world right now.
Okay, so I guess what I do, what my day job is at the moment is that I run workshops. I do practical productivity training in all sorts of different companies. So this week I'm going to be heading down into London. I'm working with a company who does non-alcoholic drinks. So a really small startup, and they're making great waves in their industry. I'm doing a workshop with them to how to manage all that opportunity without getting overwhelmed. So a stress less, achieve more workshop. Later on in the week, I'm going to be speaking at a conference, talking to learning and development people, typically in big companies, big corporations, and engaging with them, a conversation around how to help their people be more impactful and less busy. So I guess a lot of what I do is about having conversations with people, whether that's a face-to-face conversation over a coaching session, or through the written word, through my writing, or through practical workshops and speaking. So it's all around how do we live our most productive life,
Awesome.
Do our best work, but in a way that does us good as well as the good that we're doing in the world.
Awesome. And how did you know that this is what you were called to do? Like, what were you doing beforehand? And how did you transition into this work?
So it's an interesting journey that I've had. How did I know I was called to do it? Kind of gradually. So what I was doing before, I actually did a degree in international management and modern languages. So I was kind of prepped and primed to run the corporate ladder. So most of the people I studied with have gone off to work in big banks and consulting companies and oil and gas companies. I ended up working in marketing for a pretty small renewable energy company. And I quickly realized that actually it wasn't the field I wanted to be in. And one of the things I realized was that certainly in that job, it was all about numbers. And numbers don't excite me, people do. And so I went through what I now affectionately call my midlife crisis in my mid-20s, so get it over and done with, and started a journey of just exploring actually, who am I, how am I wired, what do I want to do, what do I want to be? And it's taken a while. So initially, I took a career break and we started a family. So I plunged myself from I don't know what I'm doing into a real sense of I really don't know what I'm doing now. So it took me a little while to get over the initial shock of parenting. But then when I started looking into what do I want to do, I started exploring this idea of coaching, partly because I had been on the receiving end of it. So I noticed how powerful it was for myself, but also because there were some skills and some aspects of it that really resonated with who I am. So one of my values is I really, really enjoy helping people. I get a lot of joy out of that. I love having conversations. I love listening to people, finding out more about them, what makes them tick. And initially I thought, well, who am I, aged 20 something to, impart advice on other people, to be some kind of guru to help other people figure out what to do with their lives. But actually, the more I looked into it, the more I realized, do you know what? It's not about having all the answers. It's about helping other people to be the expert in their lives and help other people to find their own answers. And so that's what really appealed to me. So I retrained, became a coach. Then I realized that actually there were very few jobs at the time that would employ you to be a coach. So I had to start up my own business and kind of start from scratch there. Ended up working with a lot of people who were juggling business and family. So too much to do, not enough time, how do I fit it all in was the biggest challenge, the biggest issue. At the same time, my kids are 12 and 8. My business is, I think, 9 years old now. So it's kind of like my middle child. So the time issue was very much a real thing for me as well. And so people started asking me, how do you do it, Grace? How do you fit it all in? How do I do it? How do I make this work? And I thought, I'm actually naturally disorganized. So I wouldn't have naturally picked productivity or time management as my thing. But I realized if people are asking me the question, if I can help in some way by the answers that I give or the answers that I seek and explore, then I'm going to do it. I'm just going to answer the question. And so that's how I ended up diving into this world of productivity. Wow. And it's kind of all gone snowball from there, really.
And was there a point on your journey where maybe you were heading in one direction, your leadership journey, and something happened, an event, an incident, I don't know, that made you sort of change direction altogether? Like an epiphany, a light bulb moment of some sort?
And it's an interesting one. I don't think there was a light bulb moment that made everything turn around, but I think there was one moment that helped to start drawing things together. So I've always been pretty good at whatever I throw my hand at, with some exceptions. So I was always really bad at PE. So don't get me to do sporty things, and and don't get me to do ironing. I'm not good with an iron. But other things, generally, I can be a jack of all trades. And I remember, maybe 9-10 years ago, I had a conversation with. No, in fact, it was less than that. It was probably about 7 years ago. I had a conversation with my pastor, and I was in a real moment of I don't know what I'm doing. I've got my fingers in so many different pies. Who am I? Who am I called to be? And what am I called to do? And what is my calling? And I really wanted him just to tell me. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he didn't. But one of the things that he got me to think about was, okay, so you're doing lots of things that seem to be in different fields. They don't seem to tie in together. It seems to be kind of in all different directions. But actually, what's the thing that you bring to each of those roles, to each of those fields of ministry, if you like? Mm-hmm. And through this conversation, I realized that there was one thread that was very clear to me, which was all about encouraging people. So whatever I was doing, whether it was, spending time with my friends with their little babies and we're, trying to navigate through sleep deprivation and just keep each other going, or whether it was, a couple of other sort of part-time businesses that I was running at the time. So whatever field I was in, the one thing that actually brought me to life and, was the thing that I really enjoyed doing was encouraging people. So that became my thread. So whatever field I went into, it was, how do I encourage whoever I'm talking to right now? And that's, so looking back now, the way that I write, the way I coach, the way that I speak, all has that thread together. I didn't know it at the beginning, but it's kind of all come together. Yeah.
What's been your biggest challenge in your leadership journey so far? Can you tell us that story and the lessons you learned?
That's a really interesting question. I think one of my biggest challenges is, and it's a continuing one for me, is imposter syndrome. So it's the question of, who am I to? So, I said earlier, I'm naturally disorganized. So who am I to be the person who to teach people productivity strategies and how to get themselves organized? Who am I to do this thing? And I think it's one that gets me at different stages of my journey. So, I definitely had it at the beginning when I was starting up. I definitely had it when I was writing my first book and my second book, and I still have it now. So still sometimes when I'm invited to speak at a conference, or I'm invited to, influence in some way, there's a part of me that goes, "Oh, who am I to do this?" And it's interesting, actually, when you talk about leadership, when you invited me to talk on, to talk on this podcast, it reminded me of a conference of women in leadership, Christian women in leadership. I was invited to be on this panel, and I remember being on this panel and thinking, I'm on this panel with other people who are leading churches and leading charities and organizations. And, I work for myself, I work as part of a team, but I don't lead a team of people in that conventional sense. And I remember thinking, who am I to be on this panel? But I think the lessons I've learned from that is, I can ask the question, and sometimes I don't have a good answer, but and sometimes the answer is just, I've been invited. So, it's responding to the invitation and then deciding, how can I best contribute? What can I give into this conversation? And maybe the fact that I don't conventionally fit into that box means that I can bring a fresh perspective or a fresh insight.
It's great. And so many people, that's probably one of the most popular things that we've heard on the podcast about, defying self-doubt, and literally still be able to step into that space and do that. And we'll chat a bit more about that in a moment, actually, Gary. I've got a question for you on that a bit later on, but you've been doing this for some time now. You've been in this space for some time, a couple of great books on the subject. How do you now define success at this stage in your journey?
That's a good question. I think how I've learned to define success, there's two sides to it. So one is, rather than thinking of it as a where am I going? What's the destination? There's an old cliche that says, it's the journey, not the destination. And I think it's more than that. It's not just the journey, it's who you're being and who you're becoming as part of that journey. So I think success is less about where you're going, but who you are and who you're becoming. And I think also it's about the how do I get there, or how do I achieve something, rather than just what am I trying to achieve. I remember once, going back to encouraging, I remember once being really challenged on how I was leading at home. So, with my kids, with my husband, because, I can be, I can be super encouraging and smiley and positive and inspiring and insightful when I'm in the limelight. But am I that same person when I'm at home, when I'm tired, when, when I let my guard down, if you like, but, also when I'm most, it's not letting my guard down. It's more just, somebody called it the other day, what am I like when am I, not just when I'm in my best self, but who am I
behind the scenes?
Exactly. Who am I behind the scenes? But what's my git self is how they put it. When I'm tired and when I'm with people who I can completely let loose on and be very familiar with, like my family. Sometimes I notice I'm not at my most encouraging. So I think sometimes it's not just about what am I trying to achieve, but how am I going to do that, and and doing that in a way that's honoring to who you are, honoring to what you believe, and honoring to who and what God's called you to.
That's great. And that's not always easy, right?
No.
So being the productivity ninja,
Mhm.
what does the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like?
I love this question because people so often go, right, okay, tell me, what do you get up at 5? Do you do some exercise? Do you meditate? It's like, actually, the truth is I'm not naturally a morning person, so I'm a really slow riser. So the first 90 minutes of my day actually involve me getting up quite slowly. My husband's the one who's a morning person, so he gets up, he starts getting breakfast on for the kids. I get up really slowly. I spend some time with the kids over breakfast. Usually walk my daughter to school. My son goes to school by himself now, but I still get to do the school walk with my daughter. And then it's on the walk back from school that I start to kind of pick up pace mentally and physically to go, okay, so what does today hold? And what's my focus today? How do I choose to be? And kind of that the walk back is when I start my working day. But the actual first 90 minutes of my day are really slow.
That's cool. And you know what? It's great. It's refreshing sometimes to hear that, actually. I mean, so many people will say, like, you're right, I do this in the morning, I do that in the morning. But, like, I'm a new dad now as well. I've got a new baby. She's 9 months old. And, forget morning routine. Like, it's
Right.
just to try and you got to get up super early if you're going to if there is going to be a morning routine. But she becomes priority, so it's adapting to that and adjusting to that, but still being able to get things done. So what other key habits have contributed towards your success?
So I guess a couple of things. So one for me, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm quite an optimistic person. I'm pretty smiley, usually look for the best in things, in situations and in people. But I realized actually that's also partly it's my personality, it's my disposition, but also partly it's a habit that I've cultivated. So one of the things that I notice I do is I'm really mindful of language and the words I choose to use to describe either how I'm feeling or what I'm doing. And if I say something and I notice that something in my spirit goes, oh, I don't like that. I will stop and I'll think about it and go, why is that? And I'll try and choose a different word to describe that situation or a different word to speak into that situation. Because I find that actually the words that we use frame our experience of an event. And actually, when we reframe that experience, we can see it in a new light, and it often then changes how we respond to it. So it changes our actions as well. And I think that's been something I've cultivated as a habit. The other thing that I often cultivate is relationships. So relationships are really important to me. So one of the things that I will make time for is connecting with people and also having those deeper conversations. So, for example, one of the things I do, now as part of my work is I do a lot of traveling. And so as part of that traveling, I'll often take some time before I travel to plan ahead and think, as well as where am I going to stay and what trains I'm going to take, but also who lives in that location, who have I been meaning to connect with, who would I love to have a conversation with, and I'll try and line up some coffees or dinners or and it's a range of people. It might be somebody who's been on my heart for a while that I just want to connect with and spend time with. It could be someone who I've looked up to for a while and think, actually, I'd love to learn more about them and connect with them and chat to them. It could be someone I think, we have some things in common. Maybe we can help each other out. But I'm really mindful about cultivating, connecting, and cultivating relationships because, that's part of how I work. But also I think it means that when you do need help, and we all do need help, but you've got a wider network of support to draw on. And I mean, I was completely blown away when I launched my first book, being, someone who, I had a small circle of influence. I'd been invited to write this book. I didn't, I had that whole imposter syndrome. I put it out there and I was completely blown away by the number of people who went out their way to promote the book, to share the book, to, tweet out about it, to kind of send newsletters to their readers and their followers, to tell them about it, to write reviews about it. Completely blown away. And I remember saying that to someone, just saying how how humbled I felt by the support that I'd received. And they turned around and said, "But Grace, you've been sowing into this. It's because you're always ready to help somebody else, with whatever they need help with. So of course we're going to try and help you when you need help."
It's great, man. Beautiful. And what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
So I know the question that's coming after this, and actually the answer to both my biggest weakness and my biggest strength is I love people.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is, I do think sometimes our biggest weakness is the shadow side of our strength. So any strength can be overused and become a weakness. So I love people, and that's why I love doing the job that I do. I love having conversations. I love understanding people. I have a lot of empathy. So when somebody is coming from a different point of view to me, my first instinct isn't to argue with them. My first instinct is to go, okay, where are you coming from with that? And what does your world look like? And what does your life look like? And how have you come to that conclusion? And I think given the work that I do, it's definitely a strength. And given how I walk out my faith, I think it's also a strength. But it can be a weakness because also the other side of it means that I do care what people think. And sometimes that can turn into people pleasing. It can turn into overcommitting and spreading myself too thin, saying yes to too many things, saying yes to too many people. So it's both sides. And I think it is, we walk this tension whenever we have something that is a strength. We walk this tension of just noticing, when does it get overused? When does it become a weakness? And just being really mindful of that.
Thank you. So true. I know many listening can relate to that, and I can relate to it myself. So going back to the beginning of your journey, you starting out in leadership, as many who maybe are listening right now, they're thinking about either launching that business or launching that product or launching that ministry. What was holding you back at the beginning, if anything?
So it's interesting because I think I'm typically not someone who starts stuff. So I'm not typically what you would conventionally see as a leader. I'm not the person at the forefront of starting things off. I'm not even, in terms of how I create, I don't tend to do my best creation out of kind of a blank sheet of paper. I'm not the one who comes out with the most innovative ideas. I'm usually someone who joins in a conversation and brings a fresh perspective in. So I guess what was holding me back is the thought that I'm not a typical leader in that sense. But what I've learned is that there are different styles of leadership. So I guess my style is I'm a supportive leader. So I'm typically at my best when I'm supporting other people. And sometimes that's not me being in the limelight, but sometimes it is. So when I'm, my books, for example, that's going into the realms of thought leadership. When I speak, the limelight is on me, and I am leading that conversation. So sometimes it is forefront. But in that vein, I'm still kind of it's very much about supporting other people, supporting them in their journey and helping them find their way through, helping them to shine brighter.
So what was holding you back, if anything, from stepping into that space?
I guess what's holding me back now...
What was when you first started?
Yeah. I think what was holding me back was that conventional definition of leadership.
Right.
It's the, to lead something, you must be the person to come up with the idea or to be the one who stands out. And actually it's, what I've learned is you can lead in your own way.
Yeah.
So for example, I'm an extrovert, I'm not an introvert, but I love the book that Susan Cain wrote on quiet, how introverted people change the world and how introverted leaders work. So if you're typically not brash and bold and outspoken, you can still be a leader.
Absolutely. And who have been your top 3 most significant mentors in your leadership journey?
Oh, I think it's been different people in different seasons. So the senior minister at the church that I go to, Martin, he always inspires me. So sometimes it's been a direct conversation like the one that I told you about, where we kind of find that encouragement as a thread. Other times it's just by looking into how he is and how he leads. So I've always been very inspired by the way that he leads very humbly and very vulnerably. So I think vulnerability is often overlooked as a characteristic of leadership, but it can be so powerful, because when you're willing to be vulnerable and willing to be, to show up as fully human, it means that you're far more relatable, and it means that you don't get put on this pedestal where actually it's all about being perfect.
That's great.
So I very much admire that in him. So I would say he's been a significant influence on me in terms of watching how he leads. Bev Murrell is another person who I've had the privilege of meeting and spending time with. So she does a lot of work in encouraging women in leadership, particularly in Christian circles. She's written a couple of books, one of which is one of my favorites. So Speak Life and Shut the Hell Up is one of the books that she's written, again, on language and the power of speaking life. And also I found her really, she's been a great mentor in that leadership space in terms of the home, as well as professionally. So in terms of her marriage, she's really spoken a lot into me, my marriage, and I've been able to ask her a lot of questions just because she's ahead of me in that journey as well, in terms of how do you work that out. And then the third person, actually in this season at the moment, it's one of my close friends, Freya, who I'm just really inspired by her relationship with God. So she's a good friend of mine. She's actually been a coaching client in the past, and I would say she's a peer. But one of the things that I've noticed, she's gone through a big journey recently. So she left an abusive relationship, and she's actually remarried to an incredible guy and both of them are so fired up for God. And what's inspired me most is the journey of healing and the speed of healing that God took her through, because she was willing to walk closely with him. And so that's really inspiring me. So I'm learning a lot from her in terms of how she walks closely with God at the moment.
Praise God. Awesome. Now, we know that productivity is your space. Just released a book recently called The 5 Core Abilities of Highly Effective Leaders. And based on interview research over the last kind of couple of years through the podcast, over 100 different leaders we've spoken to now. And one of those 5 core abilities is the ability to focus on the key things and delegate or eliminate the other things. How do you go about doing that? And what are the keys to being able to create that kind of focus and delegate or eliminate the other things and, maximize that productivity?
So it's interesting. A couple of questions just came to mind that I remember. Actually, I remember my pastor asking me, and it was based on the conversation that God had with Moses. And the questions are, what is in your hand and where is your land? So I think whenever you're going into either, especially when you're starting up a new business, when you're starting up a new ministry, there is such opportunity. There are so many different things that you could be focused on, so many different opportunities you could pursue and you could grab hold of. Sometimes that opportunity can turn into overwhelm. And I think one of the things that always helps me to regain that focus is going, okay, where am I standing right now in terms of, what do I bring to this? What's my history? Where am I? What's ahead of me? What's my current situation? So what does my world look like right now? Where's my land in terms of what is the change I want to see? What's that vision? And what's that vision, purpose, and calling that I feel called towards? And then what's in my hand? What can I do about it right now? So if you're feeling overwhelmed that there is so much you want to change, and actually that you're just one person right now, or you're just a small team, then it's what do I have to hand right now that I can start making a difference? What's my contribution today, rather than feeling overwhelmed by how do I change this great big, how do I move this mountain almost? But also it's, what's my land, and, not necessarily everybody else's land. So to get really practical, for example, if you're a doctor, you generally start to specialize in a particular, so if you're a surgeon, you can't be a specialist in lots of different areas. You have to start specializing in, here's where I choose to make a difference, and this is what I'm going to get really good at doing. And it is about making those choices. So when it's delegating, one of the things I often say to people is, what are the things that only you can do? What can you release that other people can do so that you can do only what you can do? And that helps you to decide, actually, where do I need to put my focus on right now? What do I need to accept and actually let go of? But also, what are some of the things that I can release into other people that actually they can then, do their best work as well? Because if I do everything myself, so, I use my kids as an example. If I tie their shoelaces for them, they'll never learn how to do it themselves. And yes, it's always quicker for me to do it, but over the long run, if I let them learn, yes, it takes longer, yes, it's harder, but actually they'll be able to, they develop a skill that they can use, but also we can get ready out and get out the door a lot quicker. So, there is something about leadership isn't just about what can I do, it is about how can I empower other people. And it is also about just deciding, what are we going to say no to for now, so that we can say a wholehearted yes to what we're pursuing, what we're going for.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. And what's the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
So what am I most fired up about? I think at the moment I'm most fired up about conversations. So changing the busy conversation is something I'm very, very, very into at the moment.
What do you mean by that?
So if you ask somebody, how's it going? How's life? How's business? How's work?
Busy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the word that we most commonly choose to use to describe our life and our work. But if you think about it, busy is a really vague word. So you could be busy getting distracted. You could be busy doing all the things that you should be delegating. You could be busy responding to 101 different things and going all in different directions rather than being focused on one direction. And I think there is something about busyness that distracts us, or potentially can distract us from being purposeful. It can also overwhelm us. So the number of people who go, I can't even think because I'm so busy. And actually it can really undermine our productivity. But also there's a bit of a cult of busyness. So there's a bit of a badge of honor that we can wear busy like a badge of honor. It's like, look how in demand I am. Look how much work I've got going on. I'm so busy.
So how are you actually what are you doing around that space? Are you blogging about it? Are you speaking about it?
Yeah, so I have blogged and I have written about it. It's in my book a lot. So I did I did a talk earlier in the year actually for an event called Disrupt HR, which is around new ideas. So it's kind of fast and furious talks, 5 minutes. Give us an idea to think about.
Sure.
HR differently, and that was videoed, and the video's just come out recently. So I've been sharing that, and I've been blown away by the number of different people who are sharing it and applying it, and people writing back saying, actually, this has really changed. The way I think about that word. I'm going to be really mindful of how I use it. So that's what I'm really fired up about at the moment is the potential of changing that conversation.
Awesome. And is there a book or a resource that you'd recommend right now for a leader or entrepreneur?
So two of my favorite authors are Brené Brown and Patrick Lencioni. So I'm going to give you two books. So Patrick's book on it's called Getting Naked, and it's a business fable. So I think for anyone who's starting out in a business or any kind of service-oriented work that you do, it's a really great book around how do you do that with authenticity and vulnerability and actually provide better service. You're in a world, especially if you're in a world that feels really competitive, sometimes we can feel like we have to harden ourselves to face that competition, but this completely turns it upside down. So that's definitely worth a read. And the other one I'd say is Brené Brown's Daring Greatly, because that's all about, it's actually all about cultivating wholeheartedness. And I truly believe that the health of the thing that we lead depends on the health of who we are and our spiritual health, our emotional health. So the health of our heart and our soul will impact on how well we can do our work. And Brené Brown's a great writer on that kind of inner work that you can do as well.
Awesome. And how do we find out more about you? How do we do you have any? Can you give us your links for your social media handles and how do you find out about your books? Give us all that information, if you will.
So if you're on Twitter, my social media handle there is @GraceMarshall. So super easy to find me there. And love to have conversations as well. So do tweet me with your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, because that's how some of my ideas come about, is through those conversations. Grace-marshall.com is my website. So that's where you'll find out, that's where you can read more of my blogs. You can get, if you go to the book section, you can download the first chapter of my latest book and have a read of that. And you can also find out about my workshops that I'm running and the coaching that I do from there as well. So grace-marshall.com is the website. And if you're on Twitter, @GraceMarshall is how you connect with me.
Awesome. Guys, go and check out Grace's work. Check out the books. There's so much there for you to, in your leadership journey, just around that whole productivity piece and getting stuff done and balancing out, work-life balance, all that stuff, managing your energy, managing your time. Go and follow Grace, check her out on social media, check out her website, and plug into those amazing resources. Grace, thank you so much for your time today. We made it happen.
Thank you so much for having me.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
You too.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around a leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes. Give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.